Well, hello everyone, Mirella here, and as you all know, I'm trying to make videos sometime on YouTube about astrology, but I rarely interview anybody. I think I've interviewed Nishi about a year ago. Nishi penned it, and I was trying to grill him so bad about giving me remedies for like health conditions, migraine specifically. Little did I understand how everything is so connected. But today I have a wonderful astrologer here, and she said yes to interview her, and we're going to talk about her work. We're going to talk about the upcoming total solar eclipse, which is awesome. And hang in there. I'm going to try to introduce her. I may not be the greatest at it, but her name is Laura Barat, and she is in Colorado. She is an astrologer that I find very authentic, very inspirational. And I really, really wanted her to come and talk to me. I have so many questions. So thank you so much for accepting, and welcome, Laura.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for inviting me. I'm glad to be here.
I know we are 1 week away from the solar eclipse. And you know, as being a new astrologer, I'm questioning all these transits, and I wanted to talk about that. And then when I reached out to you, you've actually sent me some material that I am so interested in. It's about liberation houses and the 4th and 8th and 12th. And I think you call them truth moksha.
Yeah, the moksha houses. Yeah. The truth trine.
There's the trine. I love how that sounds.
Yeah, the truth trine. And then you can also call them the trine of happiness or the trine of emotional fulfillment, because in Western astrology, they're the water houses, and related to the water signs of Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces. And I was really interested in these because, you know, being in this profession, you come across people who are very interested in different kinds of spiritual paths, and everyone that I talk to, I don't think there's anybody that I've ever talked to that hasn't explored above and beyond, you know, just the phenomenal world. So these houses start to become really important in people like us, you know, and I would always see that, you know, if someone was having problems in a certain area of their studies of spirituality, of their practice, then you could see that affliction in the chart. And so it's really important to talk about the different aspects of the whole path to enlightenment, because there's so many different aspects to it shown in this truth trine. So yeah, I really wanted to kind of talk about that and make a course about that. And so that's what it is. It's actually a course. I've made it into a course, and I'm going to be doing videos along with the manual that I wrote. And I have some videos on YouTube about the 8th house. But this is a much more in-depth course. And I go into each planet in the house, in the sign that they occupy, and also if they are conjoined any other planets, because that's going to say a lot as well, the conjunctions and aspects, and just how strong the planet is. So I just want to make sure you're recording all of this, right?
I hope I am. You know, I'm like very not high tech, but it says somewhere. Yes, it does say recording.
Okay,
yes.
Great. Yeah, because I did that once. I did a whole interview and forgot to hit record, or I hit something else. But anyway, so good.
And that could happen to us. The way, you know, I was a little bit late, so you know how we started. So thank you for checking that. You wanted to do that.
Yeah. So I really would, this is a great subject because right now, you know, there's a lot going on in the sign of Cancer, and we're going to have our eclipse in Cancer, and Cancer is the natural 4th house. And a lot of people don't associate the fourth house with moksha or, mysticism. They think of the fourth house as the mother in the home, and but the fourth house is emotional security, emotional happiness, being fulfilled emotionally, and when it's afflicted, the person can suffer from depression or anxiety, just like they can when the moon is afflicted. And the moon rules Cancer, the natural house of the home. So when I talk about the fourth house in my course, the fourth house is the very first step. The fourth house rules the past, everything that came from the past, and all of the wisdom and knowledge that mystics from the past wrote down for us to consume and to give us emotional inspiration, and to comfort us in a way, from the harsh reality of the world. So that's what the fourth house does. It's very much a hidden house. It's when we're born, it's straight beneath us, so we cannot see it. And so it's a very hidden house. It's our emotional state that we live with. And so when we begin a journey of spirituality or self-knowledge, really satisfying the emotional craving for people from the past who went through these same experiences. It's reading about the Veda, I guess you could say, the truth, and then kind of bringing it into your own experience, bringing it into your own emotional body, which is the fourth house of the moon, and letting it comfort you and letting it inspire you to move to the next step. So an interesting aspect to the fourth house is if you have the sun there, if you have the sun in the fourth house, the sun is our inspiration, right? That's where we get all our inspiration and ideas and to create something new. And the fourth house is where the sun doesn't do well in the fourth house, because the sun is also the king. And the king needs to see his kingdom. He needs to be in the 10th house. That's where they get digbala, or directional strength. And he can't see his kingdom when he's down there in the fourth house. His whole kingdom is built around his emotional state, which really isn't conducive to the sun's energies, because the sun wants to create and do more than kind of receive and be receptive, which is the fourth house. And so the person with the sun in the fourth house really has their kingdom built around their emotional state, and they can get a lot of inspiration from those past experiences of the mystics. But they kind of keep it to themselves. They really are they'll translate it literally. They sometimes, if the moon is afflicted in the fourth, the person can become dogmatic about their shastras. I believe we had kind of a discussion about this in the group, but they can become really dogmatic about what the past said, especially if you have nodes there. Also, if you have the K2 there, you can also become kind of stuck in certain shastras and not incorporating that into what it means in your modern life. So that's really important to understand about people who have afflicted fourth houses. They can become a little dogmatic about their belief system in regards to what the past is saying, right? So yeah, that's that's a good description of the fourth, and not a lot of people know that about the fourth house.
I was going to say, when I read the material, I automatically got drawn to that specific, because you're right, people associate the fourth house with emotional stability, with mother, with land, with all that. But rarely do we, I've heard people talk about the past and the karma, and I think that's wonderful, because it explains so much more. In order to get that liberation, you have to be able to get some knowledge. It's something that you can actually relate to, since the moon is the one that rules Cancer. And
Hmm.
the sun, you said, is not doing that great in the fourth because of the directional strength, right? It doesn't
Right.
direct energy. And it's funny because sun, like you're right, it's all about creation. So it's exalted in Aries, which is the first natural sign. So
Hmm.
it can't really quite feel that good there. Or is it possible that somebody that has sun in Cancer is more introvert or no?
Well, actually, no. The sign of Cancer is a cardinal sign. Its energy is flowing out. You know, it's the beginning of the solstice, and we're just in it now. And so, people who have identity factors and any cardinal signs are going to have a more outgoing personality.
Okay.
But the uh, the sun in the fourth house will tend the person to be more inspired by um, what comes from the past, and to be in their own emotional state will inspire them if they have that sun in the fourth.
And
um,
the fourth house doesn't always have to be Cancer, though it's natural
no,
Cancer. The fourth
right.
house, as long as you have fourth cusp, fourth house indicators, or maybe sun ruling the fourth. No?
What you have to have fourth house indicators? What did you say?
As long as the fourth house is somehow involved and you have like sun in the fourth, or does that apply if sun rules the fourth?
Not really.
Okay.
If the sun rules, if the fourth house is Leo, um, it really depends on if there are any planets in Leo, and also to see how strong you are in understanding what the past is trying to tell you, how well you can do that, and kind of also translate it for other people in a modern context. You'll have to look at the fourth house, but if there's nothing there, if the fourth house is empty, you do have to look at the Lord of the fourth to see how strong the Lord of the fourth is.
Okay.
And if it's if it's strong, then that person is able to do that very well. But if the sun rules the fourth house, no, it doesn't. That's not going to really have a bearing on what I was just mentioning. If it occupied the fourth.
God.
uh, because a lot of people don't understand the concept of Digbala, especially Western astrologers. That's why I like to kind of throw that out there because it's really important. Digbala is so important. I think it's just as important as the exaltation or debilitation.
It's my favorite bala. Like somehow I always get drawn to it. It's so easy to remember. Yeah, Mercury and Jupiter have the bala the most in the first, and it explains a lot. So I'm liking that you bring this Digbala out because
Yeah.
it makes so much sense.
Oh, it totally does. And then there's a yoga actually that says if a person has 3 or more planets in Digbala, then that person will be a king. And it doesn't even talk about exaltations or any of that. And I know somebody who has it is Martha Stewart. She has 3 planets in Digbala. So she had, and it's not even. I think it's Saturn is in Taurus in her 7th house or something. But so it's not. It has nothing to do with their dignity, but it definitely has to do with their position in the sky. So
Oh,
yeah,
nice.
that's why I was just mentioning how the sun isn't the best placement in the fourth for the indications of the sun, but the person can, they're very very into their emotional state, um, and uh, and being happy is important to them. Finding happiness, finding that emotional fulfillment is going to be important for a person who has the sun or really any identity factors in the fourth house. And so, the good planets in the fourth house are Moon or Venus. That's where they get their Digbala. And then, for another example is the nodes. If you have K2 near the fourth or in the fourth, you're going to have a talent for translating things into, translating what the past was trying to tell us. You're going to have an easier time of doing that. You're going to have a talent for doing that. So, So yeah, that's really what the fourth house is all about when it comes to the spiritual path. It's like the beginning, our first step. And
That's the first step into like liberation. Like you can't really get into the eighth and 12th until you kind of understand the fourth.
right, right. Yeah, you have to have that emotional need, to seek seek the source. You it's mostly about our inner state more than what's going on in the outside world. Which so that's all the truth trying. And then when you get to the eighth house, the eighth is actually putting a spiritual path into practice, doing your meditation or praying or doing your chanting or trying to move the energy through the body. Whatever it is that you do, you're trying to get closer. You're trying to merge with something higher than yourself. You're attempting to uh, become a better person, raise your vibration, whatever it is. So then when you start doing that, all of these things come up that you never thought would impede your progress, or you start having you start remembering. When you do meditation quite a bit, or I notice when any type of spiritual path, your memory improves because you're bringing all of these things into consciousness that was buried down in your subconscious, and you're expanding your awareness. So you start to realize a lot of your flaws, a lot of the things that are hanging you up. You start to realize what is some of your traumas that you may have suffered. And you may even remember traumas from past lives that come up that are affecting you in this life. So you're really just kind of dealing with your own childhood memories. You're dealing with your past life karmas, and then you're also dealing with ancestral karmas. So the eighth house is a really strong, it's no joke. It's something we really have to work at, and it really does transform a person.
And that's why I think it has, well, one of the reasons why it has the bad reputation. But what I think I wanted to ask, and I've seen you wrote about that, is like this transformation doesn't happen overnight, which is the huge misconception that happens. People want to transform, want to find your weakness, remove the weak link. It doesn't work like that.
No, it doesn't. And there's not, and sometimes you go through it in waves. You'll go through the eighth house and you'll go through a major transformation, and you think you've kind of purged some of your psychological demons. And then you go to the 12th house where you let all of that go, or realize, oh, this is me. What I was experiencing, all these negative experiences, they're me. They're not outside of me. That's all the 12th house. But having the experiences is the eighth house. And then sometimes you do transform quite a bit, and then you go to the 12th house and let it go, and you kind of have some enlightenment. You have a moment of bliss or whatever it is. You come to a lot of realizations, and then you kind of rest, and it all becomes part of you at the 12th house, or you let that ego go that was fighting those things, and then you start all over again. You go get inspired, emotionally inspired. You feel that emotional need to study again, and then you go to the eighth again. And this time, when you go to the eighth and you're doing your practices, even more things start to come up, and maybe they're more than you want to deal with, or maybe it's going to take a lot longer this time around for you to accept certain parts of yourself and let go of those things, and so that takes longer, or it may take shorter. We struggle with these things depending on, the transits and what dasha or a mahadasha and antardasha we are in, or, if we're going through outer planet transits to our identity factors, it'll bring up some of these things too that will impede the progress or move it along. So that's why it's really important to know the chart exactly. So, planets in the eighth house are it's what we use on a psychological level. It's the energy we use to try to merge with something, to try to push us to let go and do our practices. And it's the energy that brings these things into our consciousness. So if it's like Venus in the eighth house, everyone gets so worried, oh, I have Venus in the eighth house, I'm never going to find a partner or anything. That's not true at all. That's not true. But what it shows is if Venus is in the eighth, then we want to feel comforted. We want to feel better in a worldly sense. And the most worldly sense is relationships. So we transform a lot through relationships if Venus is in the eighth house. And other people and dealing with other people and being a diplomat, having manners, having decorum, we're going to transform through those things, all those things that Venus rules. But the main one being relationships and marriage. It really is going to change us quite a bit into a different person. And we're going to see a lot of flaws through relationships. So that's how that works. Whatever that energy is in the eighth house, it's going to bring all these things to the surface through the agency of its energy. So if it's the moon, the moon is kind of similar to Venus in being a very worldly planet. It's the planet of senses. So, and it's our mind and our emotional state. So our emotional state is going to be what facilitates that transformation. Our emotions very much are going to transform us over time. Moon in the eighth house. Also, moon in the eighth house, people are very interested in astrology, the psychic occult side of life. So their whole mind is in that set. You can do that with any kind of planet. You can just read it as this is how the person bonds to other people. This is how the person transforms themselves, what the energy they're using. So if you have Saturn there, if you have Saturn in the eighth house, you're going to have some fear around bonding with other people and trusting other people, because Saturn is our fear and our need for security on a material level to keep us alive. And then, so if Saturn's in the eighth house, we kind of fear that going in that direction. And it's actually our fears that will transform us if Saturn's in the eighth. So it's very interesting seeing planets in the eighth house. They're quite relevant, very relevant to a person's spiritual path. Do you have anything in the eighth?
Because I'm not sure about my ascendant, it's either Sagittarius or Capricorn. I could have, so I have Jupiter in Leo, and I have no planets in Cancer. I don't think so. But I do have a beautiful Rahu Saturn in Virgo. So the eighth, it would be Jupiter, right? If I was a Capricorn ascendant, if I was a Sagittarius ascendant, then Cancer would be my eighth. So Moon would rule my eighth. And Moon is in Sagittarius, and I have K2 in Pisces.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. How about you?
I've got Jupiter in the eighth too.
You do?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And Jupiter is my ascendant lord. I'm a Pisces ascendant. So I'm really, I'm an astrologer. And then Jupiter is conjoined K2. So I'm very, I have that astrology combination. But yeah, Jupiter in the eighth means the person transforms through the higher teachings, through astrology. You were telling me before we got started how astrology just changed your life, and that is Jupiter in the eighth. So I bet your ascendant is Capricorn.
I am tempted to think so. It's just hard to pinpoint it now. My mother is actually trying to go find archives at the hospital where I was born, which is unheard of, you know.
Oh yeah.
So we're gonna see if we get to the bottom of it. I've had my chart rectified multiple times, and none of the times came through. But you're right. I'm tempted to think because of the Jupiter in it and because of how everything just kicked in, and how inspired. Nothing ever inspired my job, my career, relationships. Nothing ever inspired me as this Jupiter in eighth. So I think astrology is it's just something part of me that I didn't know and I discovered. But I really do believe it was kind of transformational, but I didn't see it coming. So I'm wondering if the eighth house had to do with that, because
Yeah.
it could be sudden changes, right?
Oh,
Sudden
definitely.
transformations, or at least the starting of it.
Yeah, the eighth house is the house of we don't see it coming. I mean, and it's boom, and then it just changes everything very quickly. That's why they don't like, or Mars in the eighth house, because Mars tends to make things happen very quickly, and so does the eighth house. So when you get them together, it's a lot. It's a life of very abrupt changes. It's too much energy of the same energy together. Like they don't like Venus in the seventh, just because there's too much desire energy. They call it the Karaka in the house, but it really depends on how strong the planet is. I mean, it's going to be quite different if you have Venus in Pisces in the seventh as opposed to Venus in Virgo in the seventh. So, but you can qualify that, and also you've got all the the conjunctions and planets. But certain planets don't do well in certain houses, and Mars in the eighth tends to really break things very quickly, and a life of very abrupt changes. The person doesn't. It can seem very chaotic, and but the person usually does really want to get to the bottom of their psychological motivations with Mars in the eighth, and they use logic to do that because Mars is logic. And that's another kind of weird combination, because you're using logic for something that's psychological and emotional. And that can kind of, the person really searches and will logically try to work out how they should be or how they should feel, because Mars is our should and should nots. Mars is our opinions about things. Mars is our righteous opinions, and the person may get very righteous about themselves and be too hard on themselves. If they can't transform as much as they think they should, or they're not becoming the person they think they should, they can be really hard on themselves, because it's more of an emotional thing. It's not logical. So that's why it can kind of, the person can get a little frustrated with themselves, and that frustration will come out around other people. Mars in that position is it's good for, like, if you do a path that is logical, like the path of Zen, where you use cones, to kind of work out problems that cannot be worked out, little nonsense riddles. Or if you follow a path that's more, there is actually, a whole philosophy around logic. And then there's Advaita Vedanta. It's you're using your mind to kind of figure out things, your logical mind. So that's another good way of having, Mars in the eighth. That's some of the better ways that Mars in the eighth house can express himself. Yeah. So
which planets do you think do best? Sorry, I lost my water.
Oh no.
So for this sort of moksha house that's so intense, and depending on what you have going on there, you may be prone to run away from it or blame it on others. or
Yes,
but what of
there's a lot of that. That's where you get stuck at the eighth house. People, okay, so you'll be doing your spiritual path, whatever it is you're following. You're either in a yoga path or a an Eastern path, or you're in a more Western Christianity, whatever. And all these things start to come up. You start to realize all these things about yourselves, and then you start to kind of blame some of that on your parents because you were a child, and of course, you're a child. You have to do what your parents want you to do, or you have to survive and adapt to what they want, right? And if you don't do that, then there's a lot of trauma that can happen. And a lot of people get stuck at that eighth house stage where they're blaming everybody else. We all have childhoods. We're all helpless with our or our parents, but the person will start to, blame their parents and blame their parents for the relationships they have later on. And, the romantic relationships. And, but that's the next step to the 12th house of letting all that go. You have to realize, oh, that's part of me. These parents that I chose to this family I grew up with, this is all part of me. This is a reflection of me and what I needed to experience and how I evolved, And when you ask, oh, what is the best planet for the eighth house? Well, okay, so Mars doesn't do well in the eighth house. They don't like Mars in the eighth house. But I would just say it doesn't really matter if the planet's in a good position, if it has a good, dignity or logitati of asta. Of course, that planet's going to work better for you. It's going to not take you as long to go through that eighth house stage every time you want to go through it, the stronger it is. You said you have Jupiter in Leo, so Jupiter's delighted there. So that's a good position for Jupiter. Yeah.
I was wondering because, like Scorpio, the eighth natural house, you don't really have any planet exalted in there, do you?
No.
Yeah, so there has to be a reason, like this is hard work. None of the planets are going to excel in doing so, like naturally like nobody wants to deal with the shit.
That's very true. Yeah, there's nothing exalted in Scorpio. You've got the moon debilitated in the first 3 degrees.
Yeah.
But yeah, Mars does really well there, and the sun does pretty well, and they're friends of Mars. So, and then so the whole idea of the eighth house, you can have some mystical experiences, you have some great realizations, you go back and realize some of your problems and why you have these habits that get in the way of being successful and happy. And so then you move to the 12th house, and the 12th house is all about seeing how whatever this mystical experience you had, that is part of me. That is me. That isn't something happening outside of me. That is who I am. And then you start to realize, oh, these other people and my reactions to them, and what they did to me, but that's all part of me. That made me who I am now, and this is something. You start to expand, to include everything and all of nature. And I just, it's such a cliche to say, oh, we're all one with everything, but you really start to kind of realize that in increments. And so when you start to let go of all of that blame, that's when you're really making progress. That's the 12th house. That's the whole goal, So it's really a wonderful place to have, some aesthetic yogas, or the person will excel quite a bit. And usually when you have a 12th house that's strong, or a house, you have identity factors, the person is able to let things go, and they don't seem as attached to things. And they also are kind of lighthearted. They just don't let things bother them as much. They don't hold on to it. And so yeah, that's a good description of the 12th. When you
So the
have
12, go ahead.
Oh yeah, when you have, when you have like your moon in the 12th or the sun in the 12th or Atmakaraka in the 12th, you really are kind of in that state of oneness, and you have access to other dimensions. A lot of people with a strong 12th house will be able to move through these, like the journey, what I call journeying, which is basically shamanistic journeying. You can contact the spirits, you have all of creation just beyond what is in the phenomenal world. So it's much easier for you to see how life moves on and just changes form. And when we die, we do have an essence that moves on. And because we can see, the other planes. And so that's why, 12th house people are really good at meditation and interpreting their dreams. They also are able to see how their dreams, our dreams are really our subconscious tapping on the window, saying, here, pay attention to this, and then, if we dream about certain people a lot, we kind of have some karma to go through with them. And it might not even be in physical presence. It's through the dream presence we're working through this, that we realize that, okay, these dreams are part of me, because we're making dreams. We're making all these wild dreams, and then we're saying, oh, that dream was trying to tell me something. It's like, yes, that dream is you. It's your subconscious saying, hey, figure this out. So dreams are really a great tool for healing. And they're an aspect that they're ruled by the 12th house. So
that makes so much sense, actually.
Yeah.
Yes, I have Neptune with the moon, and it's in Sagittarius, just for an entire generation. But I've always rested very peacefully, and I do have a lot of dreams, and like I wake up and I try to interpret them, or they're omens for something that I'm going to experience, which is crazy. But I mean, since I got into astrology, I try to understand Pisces better, but I know there are a lot of like psychics and astrologers that can like really connect to other planes as well, and what other people find as weird experiences they are not able to explain, is because 12th house is not easy to explain. It's like everything is mushed together, and then good luck differentiating. And I think that's why a lot of people that have maybe a weak 12th house, or they don't understand what's going on, they try to use escapism.
Yes, definitely. Very much so, because they do want to feel that oneness. Something in them wants to feel that oneness, and also just to get away from mundane life. We're born here, and we're stuck here, and it's kind of boring. It's so physical. People with a strong 12th house go off into places where they can fly, or they have stronger powers. And another thing too is the whole video game phenomena is, you have all these powers, or you can do all these cool things, and it's an escape.
Virtual.
It's an escape from boring life. And that's why people with the 12th house have that kind of reputation. So
I like it. And all these houses that we talked about, they're not easily understood, like the 4th, 8, and 12, because they're not earth signs. These are not like earth places. They're not supposed to be easily understood.
No,
like deep hidden. They're hidden houses, right?
Yes, they're hidden. So but they make what is hidden available to the person. What is hidden in their subconscious, what they're trying to do is bring that all up into the conscious of the person so they become whole, you know. So that's why they're called hidden, but they're actually trying to make what's hidden known, even if it isn't known in like a conscious sense. That's why, you know, our dreams are actually great. Okay, so a great example of this is back in the old days, in the ancient times, the oracles would give prophecy in riddles. They would never tell you outright what they thought would happen. They would give you a riddle and you would have to figure it out. And it's actually your subconscious worked on this riddle, and your subconscious knew what this riddle was in pertaining to your future. Now, you know, you have people, because we live in a time they don't value astrology, you know, as much as they should. So they want to know, oh, when's this, and this going to happen? When am I going to get married? When am I going to buy a house? You know, so you make those predictions. But in the old days, they didn't do that. They would give you a riddle about your marriage, and you would have to figure it out. And so, and it's much more healing that way, I guess you could say. It's much more interesting and fun, and it gives a legend. It makes your life into a myth or a legend. It's not some boring thing. I got to go through this, and now I've got to do this. I've got to get pregnant and have kids. Now I've got to do this. You know, just but that's why, you know, they are hidden houses, and we try to make them not hidden by bringing this to light. And that's why I tell people, you know, when I give predictions, I say, okay, this is going to happen, and you're forming pictures in your mind of how all this is going to play out. Well, I'm here to tell you, it never happens the way you think it's going to happen.
That is so true.
It never does, but it does happen. And that's why, that's the unknown part. That's the unknown, that the hidden houses, you know, make it happen, but in a way that is hidden.
And I think also part of the misconception is why people go to astrologer. They want to try to have, you know, have a handle, control all this, the whole process, be like, oh, well, now I can predict, I can figure out what's coming, keep it under wrap. It's never like that, because the
No.
more knowledge you have, there is more that you don't know. So when you have knowledge and you realize there is so much more you don't know and you do not understand, and the lessons are going to come from those particular areas that you haven't learned about yet. Like
Mm-hmm.
if the eighth house experience will be there, you cannot run away from it. Like all the different, like, you know, different ways that you can think of that a weakness, something all of the sudden will happen. Like it doesn't ever happen like that. So that's why these houses are so amazing, because they're hard to like get your hands on them. You can try to understand, and it's lovely the way you explained it all.
Yeah.
And I mean, I can see why they're hard houses. Moksha houses are not, I don't feel like they're easy houses. They're not like Artha houses, you know, go work, get my, you know, money, have a nice life. They have nothing to do with that. They have nothing to do with the creation, with the inspiration of, you know, Dharma houses. Dharma houses 1, 5, and 9 are so much different, and why I think people have
Yeah.
hard time with the moksha houses. People are trying to either focus so much on something, thinking, yeah, it's coming, the liberation is coming,
Mm-hmm.
or they will try to run away from that in every different possible way. They'll be like, no, 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 I'm not going that way. I'm not
Uh-huh.
digging deep. I am not running away. I'm like latching on to reality. Well, these moksha houses are part of the reality, but they are deep houses.
Mm-hmm. Very
Hard to
deep.
embrace. Hard to embrace. It takes a specific kind of looking at life and understanding life. And astrology is kind of right there in the middle. It's the middle moksha house in the eighth. So I feel like you have a higher chance of understanding the balance of the universe and
Yeah.
what we're here to learn, but you still can't run away from it, anything, basically.
No.
So it's
No.
quite wonderful. Yes,
Yeah.
and I think this applies not just astrology people, but to anyone that thinks there is something higher than themselves. Like you called it source earlier, and I really liked it because
Yeah.
to you and I, source is probably astrology. For somebody else, source is Allah, God. The it doesn't matter as long as people are aware there is something higher than themselves, then they'll be wanting to connect to that source. They'll be finding inspiration from the past, like you say, fourth house. I really liked what you said. I can connect to this fourth house a lot.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's good for astrologers to have that, because you're reading all of these ancient texts and, like Parashara or Jaimini, and then you have to make sense of kind of these archaic language, um, and bring it out into what it means in this modern world, because it's quite different than the world they lived in. So, yeah, it's,
I
I,
recently started to actually, I have a package right now. I'm going to start, and I started buying these old books because when you start as an astrologer, you find a great teacher, you find, lessons, and you do that. But at some point, not that that's not enough, you want to get even the older knowledge than that, because, and then let that guide you. And it's, let the way I work is like, I'm trying to make my own opinion, my own road through everything, because Ernst is amazing, but I don't have Ernst's past at all. Like I can relate to everything, but it needs to be coming from, I need to find my own inspiration, live my own hardship, figure it all out. And it's, yeah, and I think this all for house is bringing something for me, because I'm trying to connect, go to the source, like, and then roll with it, because
yeah.
I can't control my life. And I think a lot of the viewers, or the few viewers that I do have on my YouTube channel, by the way, if you allow me, I'll post this on Facebook as well.
Oh, yeah.
But but yeah, it's also wonderful. And I'm so happy that you're coming up with material on that, and then classes and courses too, because I just don't feel like there is enough information. People are wanting to know like concrete material stuff, which is great, but then even if they get a great prediction, they're going to screw it up because they're not ready to face their fourth, eighth, and 12th houses. They don't know how to handle it. They don't understand what it is. They don't understand that loss and struggle is part of it all. And
Oh,
then, yeah. So, do you have any plans on when are you going to make this official? Are you still working on this?
oh, on the courses?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm still working on it. I'm basically finished with the manual. I just need to edit it, and then I'm gonna do videos. All my courses are, you can buy them anytime on my website, and then you get access to the videos and the manual. So,
Is it okay if you share that information, your website, and
yeah,
how can
I'll,
people reach you? I want to know
yeah,
how to get in touch with Laura.
yeah, it's laurabaratastrologer.com. And then right on the menu, I have the astrology courses. But this course isn't up yet. It will be up in, like, I want to say a week or so. And then
Oh,
I'm
it's
going to
coming.
turn the manual into a book. So you can either buy the book or you can buy the course. So
That's exciting. And then, do you also have a YouTube channel, right?
yes, my YouTube channel is Laura Barat, just my name. So,
I'm
uh,
going to link all of that at the bottom.
oh,
And I
good.
so enjoyed everything. I want to find out more because it's such a like a something that takes you out of, like, brings you deep understanding. Though the one thing that I'm going to say is when people are going to read these courses, they should be aware that if they try to understand is great, but if they try to take these planets and understand their own chart, they may not always find out great things. So be open-minded when you find crappy things about your own chart, because the weaknesses that you have in a chart are exactly the weaknesses that you're supposed to work out in this lifetime in the
Absolutely.
proper way.
Yeah, absolutely. So
Yeah. Do you still have time? I would love to talk about the upcoming solar eclipse, because I
yeah.
just feel the intense energy.
Oh wow, yeah.
Do you feel it too? I think we
um,
all do it in different
mhm.
area of life, maybe.
Yeah, whenever you have these, the nodes right now are in cardinal signs. So, you have Rahu in Cancer, Ketu in Capricorn. So you have energy going out. The nodes are projecting energy out into the world. They're beginning things, they're starting things. And so this eclipse coming up on July 2nd, you have it in the sign of Cancer, but you also have it in Punarvasu and in the nakshatra Punarvasu. So that is a nakshatra that has to do with mothers, just like Cancer does, because the deity is called Aditi, the mother of the gods. And it's a very much a nakshatra or of your home, and then you've got the double mother indication, you've got the double home indication because of Cancer as well. So you can look for and another big thing about Punarvasu, and especially at the moment this eclipse happens, called the Muhurta. There's some wind. There's a lot. The Punarvasu is a windy nakshatra. That's one of its shaktis, or the basis below. I'm actually sorry, the basis above. And it has very much to do with wind. It's a windy nakshatra. It's a movable nakshatra. So what I think is going to happen is that I think homes will be destroyed by wind in some fashion. Through the next 6 months, we're going to see a lot of tornadoes destroying homes, home value. People are going to have problems with their homes. I also think that mother figures, because you're having a solar eclipse. So when the solar eclipse happens, what happens is the feminine energy swallows the masculine energy. It's also in a feminine sign of Cancer. So you have such powerful feminine energy, and then a lot of this around the mother. It eclipses too much of that, right? So what I see happening is that mothers, we're going to see some violence against mothers, or mothers perpetrating violence against their children. You're going to see people who are mothers getting attacked, or things like that. Whenever you have an eclipse in a nakshatra ruled by Jupiter, which Punarvasu is, you automatically have the 7th Tara Lord in the first Tara, because the moon rules the 7th Tara. Do you know about the Taras? The
No, that
Vedic.
is something that I didn't study, but I am looking forward to hear what you are touching on, because
Okay, so just real briefly, all it is every nakshatra is ruled by a planet,
and
and
that is ruled by Jupiter, right?
yep,
Okay.
and every planet rules 3 nakshatras. So when planets are in a nakshatra ruled by the same planet, they're considered to be conjoined. And so there's 9 taras. It's based on Vedic numerology. And so the first tara is birth, or it's the person, it's the birth of the person, or whatever it is, whatever planet's there. And so and that's called the Janma Nakshatra, which is your moon's nakshatra. But if you have now number seven has to do with destruction. It's actually the seventh Tara is related to the eighth house, which is the house of destruction and death and all of those things. So in the scheme of the Vimshodari dosha or dasha, you have the ruler of the nakshatra, and then you count from there, in the scheme of Vimshodari dasha. So when you have a nakshatra ruled by Jupiter, the seventh lord is always the moon, and the moon is always in the Janma nakshatra. So you've always got an element of destruction when you have a Jupiter ruled nakshatra. But then you've got that. You've also got the fact that there's an eclipse, which is, too much of something, too much energy of something. And then I see, the Cancer has to do with the ocean. So we're going to have more, unfortunately, fighting in the ocean, or trash or some pollution in the ocean. You have these plastics, these floating islands of plastic out in the ocean. So you're going to look for that. You're going to look for, danger to mothers and children, home destruction. I wrote something else here. Okay. So when this eclipse happens,
would you be interested in sharing your screen?
Yeah, I'll do that right now if I can. Here, let's see. Okay, here we go. Okay, can you see it?
Yes.
Okay. So this is what they call, this is the Muhurta or the Kala Jataka. It's called the Kala Jataka. Kala means time. And all it is, it's just some yogas and the nakshatras, the tithi, all of that stuff when this eclipse happens. But what I want to point out is, okay, so you've got wind. There's a lot of wind. The Muhurta is wind, and then this nakshatra has to do with wind. So that's why I see a lot of tornadoes and maybe even typhoons, wind really causing some havoc in the world. Then you have, there's something called the Panchaka Bana, and that's just an element of time. It's a increment of time. It has to do with what they call the tithi. The tithi on an eclipse is always a new moon, so it's always the first tithi. But this even makes this gets the time more incrementally. It makes it in a smaller amount of time, and you'll see this one is death and fire. So this nakshatra also has to do, Punarvasu has a lot to do with wealth and grain and food and growing things, revitalization of plants. So what I see here is like some food being destroyed, some, something going wrong with the crops, and actually fire, having to do with fire and the wind picking that up.
These effects, are they kicking in before and after eclipse? Or
this actually, usually the eclipse will last around 6 months, but so it's in that 6 months period is marked, it's like a stamp on this next 6 months. But when it really happens, when it really manifests, is when the transiting planets start to hit those eclipse points. So this eclipse is going to happen at like around 10, 11 degrees of Cancer. So the first planet to hit is Venus. And Venus is actually rules over the water element. It's going to be in Cancer, a water sign. Venus, the moon does not like Venus. So Venus in Cancer is considered to be in an enemy sign. So when it goes into Cancer and hits that eclipse point, there's going to probably be some flooding. There's just too much of that water element, and it can harm crops. It can harm, the grain that Punarvasu rules. He's very much an abundance nakshatra. He rules over rich people, the wealthy, and the grain, the food. So that's what I think will be actually happen. That's not very long from now. That's around the end of July, mid-July or so. But then and people are going to have a lot of problems with their homes. The home, it's very much a nakshatra of the home, moving house, renovating your house, and of course a lot of mother issues. Also, foreigners. Cancer is a sign of foreigners. It's an eclipse with Rahu, which rules foreigners. So more, what's going on right now with Iran and all that kind of stuff. I just see that that's going to escalate with this such a high concentration of energy in Cancer and the eclipse in Cancer. So, and Punarvasu is a movable nakshatra. And it's windy. It's movable and windy, so very kind of chaotic. Not stable, not a stable nakshatra. So things in the world will become more unstable, unfortunately. That's what I feel about this snug.
I know. Do you think the world needs that? Do you think it's still the universe trying to balance something? When things get out of whack like that, any kind of tragedies and anything that nature brings to us, I can think of tsunamis, I can think of flooding from rivers or something like that, that would tie into everything. There's something though, I just feel like everything is trying to balance. So I think there was a lot of suppression, maybe with Saturn and K2 there.
Exactly. K2 is a police state. K2 over polices things. K2 overly scrutinizes things. So it means that we're losing freedom in the world right now. Things are being clamped down on. That's what K2 does. K2 cannot let things thrive. That's what Rahu does. Rahu is more about, new experiences, new ideas, everything new coming into your life so you can grow, you can move, you can evolve. K2 doesn't want to evolve. He wants to overly scrutinize whatever it is he's attached to. So when you've got K2 and Saturn, you can't do anything. You feel very stuck. And it's the thing is, being in Capricorn, you want to do things because Capricorn is a creative sign. It's creative. It's a cardinal sign. The energy has to move outward, but you have, K2 there wants to overly analyze everything. So you have this clamp down on freedoms. You have problems with foreign entities, and just a really kind of a difficult time in the world right now. And like you were saying, yes, I think it's needed because in the West, there's such an emphasis on the third house for some reason. Third house is all communications and internet and games, but we've lost a purpose because it's the opposite of the ninth house. So it seems like our purpose is constant communication, all of the social media and all that kind of stuff. That's all third house stuff. And then, we don't really have a purpose. Everyone's just kind of in their own little worlds right now. And that's kind of what's going on in the West. And I think the karma, this K2 Saturn in Capricorn, and then you've got this eclipse happening. Yes, it's a destructive force where people need to refine their purpose, as nations, and because you've got a lot going on in the world that is kind of culminating, um, and in a conflict. You've got this whole, with Pluto there too. That's all Pluto. You'll have Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, and Pluto, and Ketu all in Cancer or in Capricorn at the end of this in January. I think it
That
is.
is a scary time because Jupiter
Yeah,
is debilitated there.
that's going to. I feel we should do a video about that later on because we could talk about that forever. But I think that's going to be, have a major impact on world economies during that time.
Do you think it's possible, for the little that I know about nakshatra, for Saturn, and I can't see because our image is there, but is Saturn in Uttarashada?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So from the little that I know, that has to do with like the victory. So I just feel like all this, like the status related to the 10th house, that could be related to the 10th house, and like all this energy in the world about, the people in power wanting to be right and wanting to be victorious at all costs. I think that could blow up too with this eclipse.
Yes, because Saturn is the Sudra. Saturn is the hard-working man, right? And he's in a Tarashat of victory. So that really makes sense that he would overcome it. And the interesting thing too is that Punarvasu, where the eclipse is happening, that nakshatra rules over high-born, rich people. So there is going to be some shakeup in this power within the next 6 months. There's going to be I would actually say there's going to be a coup in some major country, not the United States, but there is going to be a switch of power, and it's going to have to do with the lower working man. I know what's going on in Hong Kong right now, or they're having major protests there. What's happening in Venezuela? You have the common man kind of rising up and wanting their share. So yeah.
Yeah, because when you have like Saturn retrograde with Ketu, it's like people of masses are so miserable and they feel so suppressed. Mm-hmm. There's just a matter of time until something blows up, I feel like. And the Rahu has the energy, it's opposite of Ketu. If anything blows, that would be Rahu that allows it to,
Definitely. Yeah. And being in these cardinal signs, the energy is going, it's out, it's being projected out all the time. And so there is going to have there's going to be we're just going to see more of this unstable, chaotic kind of what's happening in the world, especially with suppressed peoples. I think they will want more of they're going to fight the powers that be, and also a lot of tension between foreign entities.
And maybe people will do that out of emotion. It will be like an emotional response, maybe.
Yes, definitely. With cancer involved, always.
An emotional response can be love, but it can be hate. So people, can respond to emotions very strongly.
I know. And unfortunately, that's what's happening. When we had Mars and Mercury not so long ago in Cancer, and Mars is debilitated. Mercury does not like Mars.
Oh my God, I felt that transit. Yes.
Right, and that's when we had that whole thing, and with the ship and the bomb on. Yeah, and so that happened when they were with Rahu, and so they were in the ocean. And it was two foreign enemies or three foreign entities together. So,
and I think we're still there. And I think right before the eclipse, Mars is going to switch sign to Mercury, but Mars is still with an enemy there. So the general is busy.
Yeah, when Mars and Mercury together, you're always going to get harsh words because a lot of bravado, going back and forth. Now they're in Leo, and Mars likes to be in Leo. But, you know, when they were in Cancer, it was just, there was no diplomacy. There was just a bunch of...
and not so much logic. Is like making things out of, or doing things out of trying to secure emotions. And that's why Mars is debilitated there. It can't. But it could be manifested by Mercury. So whenever Mars and Mercury are together, Mercury will manifest Mars, whatever he has to bring.
Definitely. Yep.
Yeah. So not to scare people, but this is an intense eclipse. And what we have is, when we have an eclipse, right, we have sun and moon in the same sign, and which happens once a month. You know, moon goes around, comes back where the sun is. The sun changes signs every month. So we're gonna have a new moon every single month, and we're going to have lunar eclipses. But basically, when you have the moon here in between sun, because if you go 10 seconds later, you're gonna have the moon here, right here in between, you know, so our sun is going to get blocked, and sun has to do with steadfastness. It has to do with inspiration, creation. So you have moon with Rahu, which creates a little bit too much of emotional state, swallowing sun. I just feel like people for a moment could forget about what the steadfastness, what the real deal is. They'll act out of emotion, maybe.
Yes, definitely.
And that unfortunately has repercussions.
So powerful, but it's too much. There's too much feminine, you know, because it is a solar eclipse. And so, yeah, that's why I was, you know, women in general, I think, will be in danger. There will be more attacks against women.
Oh my goodness, that's not good. And then, so if this eclipse happens in a different sign, it plays out differently. But this is happening in Cancer, which is such a feminine sign. It's ruled by the moon. So that's what makes this so powerful. And then that K2, you know, with Saturn, basically within a degree of each other, they're almost conjunct. Like, that's got to be very powerful right now.
Yeah,
so
I mean,
scary.
That there is a crackdown on Saturnian elements. There's an over policing of people that are, you know, not that are just lower workers, you know, lower down on the totem pole than most people, Saturn type of people, and also it's a kind of a collective karma because it's K2. But it's actually going to be beneficial because Saturn is in his own sign of Capricorn.
Yeah.
So Saturn is strong. It's going to eventually be beneficial for these people to speak out. And, you know, Saturn also has to do with sewage and trash and stuff like that. And that's why I think so much more attention is being paid to, you know, cleaning up our trash and especially in the oceans and knowing how to somehow clean it up, you know. And what the problems that we're having with pollution is that K2, you know, it's from our past, what we've been doing in our past karmas coming up and saying, hello, you have to deal with this. You have to do something.
Yeah, and it is dangerous because in we have all this pollution, right? But then we also have something, you know, that could happen, like a major earthquake or tsunami, something that, like in 2011, we had, you know, nuclear power, and you had, like in United States and in other countries, we have a lot of nuclear waste. So anything that's just not good for us, anything that has to do with, like you said, trash, sewage, all of that could be somehow manifesting, hopefully not at the extent that I make it sound. I tend to think of the worst, but there are major powerful players.
Like you said, it needs to happen. Yeah. This is because it's with the nodes. Anything with the nodes is going to show us, you know, a karmic tie, such a strong karmic tie. So, and it's something that needs to happen for the collective consciousness to evolve. for us to evolve as, as people on a planet collectively. But what it means in our individual chart shows up on where the eclipse is happening, what house cusp, it's touching. If you have a house cusp in Cancer, that's close, within a few degrees of this eclipse, then that house cusp, whatever that represents, is going to be affected. Usually, they say within 8 degrees. I do it much closer with a much tighter orb.
Do you do with a 3.20? Do you do a Navamsha or?
No, I do. I actually do about 4 degrees. If it's
okay.
Yeah, if it's within 4 degrees, then that's really going to affect it. Also, too, if you are a Jupiter ruled nakshatra, if your moon is in Punarvasu, or if it's in any of the other Jupiter nakshatras, then you're going to be affected as well. Your mind and emotions will be affected. You'll feel more chaotic. You might feel overly emotional just because it's happening in that Jupiter ruled nakshatra. So it's going to be in your Janma Tara, or your birth Tara. So it has a lot to say about your state of mind for the next 6 months and some of the karmic implications.
Do you feel like the good guys in the sky, like, Venus, Jupiter, like gentle planets, benefic planets, because the way they're located in regards to this eclipse, they don't bring any kind of Rashi aspect, so they can't help as much? Or you don't necessarily look at that?
I don't really look at that. I look mainly, I'll go to the screen here. I look at the Tara tables, and so what I see here, it kind of backs up what I was talking about, that Saturn being in Capricorn, and how that's a really good placement for Saturn. And we're having this karmic uplift, or a karmic burden with people that are ruled by Saturn, or also elderly people, the people who are, Sudras, the working class. But it's actually going to be, in the long run, it's going to be good for them because of that strong placement of Saturn. But and then that shows here in the Tara. So here you have Punarvasu. Here's the Sun, Moon, Rahu, all in the first Tara, because there's an eclipse happening. So then you have so here's the Vedic numerology. Number 7 is considered to be destruction, and that's ruled by the moon. So the moon's in the first Tara. So that's why, Jupiter ruled nakshatras have a little bit more of a problem. There is an element of destruction to them. And so an eclipse happening here is going to cause destruction. I really believe that. Then we have the 6th Tara, that's number 6. That's a good Tara. That's actually the most you can get from the world. That's what it means. The happiness, what it means is little happiness.
Yeah.
And so you get a little satisfaction.
Like a small fulfillment. Now that you talk about these taras, we use them in cards of truth. So I know my tribe friendly, all that, but like I didn't know how to use them astrologically. I love this.
Yeah, that's how you do that. Yeah, it's totally based on that. Yep, just use your knowledge of the cards for it. So number is good. It's a good Tara. And so when the eclipse happens, you've got Saturn K2 in number 6. That's why I think these people are going to have some more fulfillment. They're going to actually come out, what's happening in Venezuela, what's happening in Hong Kong, what's happening in France. They don't report on it, but it's still happening. They're going to have some satisfaction. They're going to make some progress in what they want. So I see that with the Saturn K2.
It's just happening the hard way with Saturn there.
Right.
Still happening.
Right. And it's long and drawn out. It's it's Saturn. You have to just suffer through it.
Be patient,
So,
resilient.
mm-hmm.
Mm.
Yeah.
And it's challenging too. Yeah.
But yeah, there's not a, like you said, there's not a lot of aspects that you've got the Saturn aspect within 7 degrees on the eclipse. That's going to be affected. You know, that also affects Saturnian things as well. Oh wow, I just had a deja vu.
Tell me.
I just had a deja vu. Like this has happened before.
Really?
Yeah, I just had one right now.
Oh my God, I have goosebumps.
Yeah, I just
Are
had a
you
deja.
allowed? Really?
Yeah, yeah, it was really weird. It was intense right now, but yeah. So Saturn and Ketu are in a good Tara. So they're actually going to come out looking good with this. But things ruled by Punarvasu are going to suffer in certain ways. So
Oh man. So I just want to prompt people because and then just from a medical perspective, right? I just read about some, public figures. I mean, we lost somebody that like Gloria Vanderbilt, which,
right.
of old age, and it happened a few weeks before the eclipse. But I've also read a report today about someone that has like 300,000 subscribers on YouTube. So he's with the new age technology, and he committed suicide at 29. And I think it's so important with this emotional house. People are being aware. Don't fall into depression. Don't fall into, this is going to be like a heavy transit. So
Yeah.
just take it as a, yeah, it's a tougher situation. Things are going to happen. They need to happen, but don't try to go do things on your own terms. Don't try to follow that and feel like it's going to solve anything. Just know that this is a transit, is longer, but there is a way out. So if anybody that's watching, they just feel like this is so intense that they can't handle it and shit has hit the fan, it's supposed to. So yeah, it's just sad. I just, whenever I see influences like that and things getting out of control in a sign like Cancer, I like to be aware.
Yeah. And Cancer rules the chest area of Kala Parush, or, the time man. He rules over our chest. So, and that's where our heart and emotions are. That's where our lungs are, where we cry, and lungs rules sadness.
Yeah.
And the heart rules, of course, our hearts. So our hearts will feel bad, we'll just not, the masculine force has been subdued in the heart area. So yeah, people are going to feel overly emotional. Even the most stoic, logical person will feel this eclipse in the heart area. They'll become more emotional. I just don't see any way around that at all. But so
what is your advice for people freaking out? Because this is something we have to go through. Like, what is the best way to go about it? Is it to be just letting it go and acknowledge it, fight through it? What is your...
Well, it's, first of all, everyone deals with it differently. And then I would say, pay attention to your dreams, because dreams are methods of healing. They are. It's not in modern psychology, but they are very much. It's our subconscious telling us what we need to focus on, and even if they just seem so nonsensical, because they do most of the time, but they're designed to be that way. So you have to figure it out, and slowly it comes into your consciousness. But on a collective level, yes, it's affecting everybody. And people need to have an emotional purge once in a while. And that's very much what is happening with this eclipse, definitely.
So allow things to break down.
Absolutely. Allow it to come. Don't fight it.
Don't suppress it. Don't fight it. It will come out at the most unexpected time. So that Rahu moon needs to be happening. Just allow it to happen.
Yes, definitely. And you can't stop it anyway. Whenever there's cardinal signs involved, you can't keep the energy contained. It's always going to be outward, pushing outward, and manifesting in the world. That's what they do. They start things. So yeah, and just by knowing what's happening in the sky, just by knowing it makes you feel better
More
in a way.
comforted in a way,
Yeah.
though you can't. It doesn't
Because it's not gonna last.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
thank you so much. I know this is going to be an intense eclipse, and I'm happy that you said yes, and we talked about it a little bit. I'm happy I found out more about the moksha houses. I just feel like I could listen to you talk for hours, but
Oh, wow.
for making the time, this was wonderful. And if you want a reading with Laura, I'm going to link her website, and she's already mentioned it, but if you didn't catch the whole video, then you can, find her information. And then I hope to have her as an invite in the future. I'm not comfortable being on camera at all. This is like huge.
Oh, wow.
So slowly, yeah, I can't. I am just so critical, and yeah. But
yeah.
slowly getting courage, and I learned a lot. So
Oh yeah, this was fun. I enjoyed this a lot. Yeah, thank you for having me on.
you. Be well, everyone.
Yes, be